Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here. Now, in case you don't remember what I said in the last review, is that I wanted to take a look at something that I don't really take a look at too often, and this one is going to be a fighting game on the PS1, and that happens to be Blue Breaker Bursts. And there is a subtitle, and it is only in Japanese, and that happens to be Igao no Asoni. I probably fucked that one up, but I don't give a shit. The game is just called Blue Breaker Bursts. So it is developed by Hune X and published by Human Entertainment, and it was only released in Japan in 1998. So this Blue Breaker Burst series only has 3 games in the series, and weirdly enough, I'm actually taking a look at the 3rd entry because I couldn't get the first 2 to work properly. So the first one that ever came out happens to be on the Sega Saturn, and it was actually a RPG. And then the sequel was a fighting game that happened to get released the same year as this one that I'm taking a look at, which is the final game. So yeah, I'm taking a look at the last one in the series because I really can't review any of the other 2, so I figured might as well start off with this one, right? So let's go over the modes in the game. So you have story mode, original mode, which is basically arcade mode, then there's versus mode, team battle mode, which is new for this entry, and then there's training. So in the game, you start off with 12 playable characters, but there is 17 in total. And all the characters have different weapons, such as swords, staffs, spears. So yes, it's a weapon fighter similar to Soul Blade. But before we move on to the gameplay, let's talk a little bit about the story. Now obviously, when it comes to fighters, the story is not really the reason why you play them, but since this game has a story mode, I figured I might as well talk a little bit about it, even though I can't say a whole lot on it, because it is only in Japanese, and there's no fan translation at all yet. But pretty much the main scenario is that you're using the main character, Chimina, and she is looking for the Holy Sword, which was apparently still an ongoing from the last game, and that's literally all I have. Not even joking, although there are other characters that you can play as that are kind of like a side story to what Chimina's shit does, but you know, other than all this, it's a fighting game. I mean, really, what do you expect? But the story mode overall just consists of, watching through cutscenes, and then you'll get into a fight every once in a while, and then you'll go to this one part where you kind of move your character around on like a board, and you move to different areas and fight other characters and all that kind of shit. Sadly, playing this mode without being able to read any of it is a little challenging, but it's pretty basic stuff to understand though. So now, let's finally get into the gameplay. So it is a one-on-one weapon-based fighter, and it takes place on a 3D field and you can actually get a ring out. And the objective is exactly what you would suspect: beat the shit out of your opponent before they beat the shit out of you. So you have a high attack, a low attack, a magic attack, and then you got a grab, and you got a super magic attack that you can only use once your magic meter is all the way up, and once you use it, it takes away all of it. And just by the way, the regular magic attacks will take up 1 little bar. So it's a really easy fighting game that doesn't really have a whole lot of depth to it. So now, let's take a look at the game's controls, and they're very mixed for me. So the button layout is very easy to figure out. So square blocks, triangle is the weak attack, and then circle is the stronger attack, and then X is the magic attack. L1 is the grab, and then holding R1 allows you to do the super magic attack. So yeah, it's one of those fighters that doesn't really have a whole lot of crazy combos that you gotta memorize. It's all very simple stuff. But as for the way how the controls feel in this kind of game, well, this unfortunately is the worst part, is that they are very stiff. And it's also one of those early fighting games where, once you get knocked down, it feels like it takes forever to get back up. But as stiff as the controls are in this game, it's not the most stiff I've ever seen, and it's also not the worst that I've ever seen either. But I'm just letting you know that it is one of those very stiff fighters that is a little bit slower paced than you might think. So now, let's get moving on to the other things, like the graphics. Now, I find the graphics in this game are also kind of mixed, but I'd say they're more good than bad. So let's talk about the good. So I really love the art style in this game. I think it looks great. Typical early 90s anime, I love it. In fact, some of the characters kind of remind me of a mix between Fire Emblem and Magic Knight Rares, so that's pretty awesome. And speaking of Magic Knight Rares, the sprites that do appear within the story mode also do remind me of the sprites within Magic Knight Rares, although not nearly as good looking as that, but pretty close looking, and I do think that's really nice. and the character portraits in the story mode also do look really good as well. Now as for the actual gameplay graphics though, yeah, this is going to be the part where a lot of people I can see like shitting on this one because it looks very old and outdated. And while they're not wrong about that, it is old and it is outdated. But for 1998 standards on the PS1, I do think it does look okay. But at least this game does look very bright and colorful, where at least the characters do have a lot of bright colors on them, and also the backgrounds of the stages also do look pretty nice looking too for the time. But personally, I think they should have went for the 2D sprite style graphics rather than 3D, but I don't think the 3D looks completely awful. But I have seen a lot better, even for 1998 standards. So I'll leave it as just okay. And now, as for the game's music, now this I consider to be the best part of the game because the music is actually pretty fucking awesome. It has like a mix of trance and fantasy, which I think does suit this game very well, and of course I really do like all the songs in the game. I haven't heard one that I thought was like really fucking bad. The only unfortunate thing, although this has nothing to do with the game, is that I can't seem to find much of the music on YouTube or even on any video game music sites. So it seems like we just gotta wait for someone to rip the OST one day, which hopefully that happens. But in the meantime though, I can at least tell you that if you do want to play this one, the music is definitely the best part. So now, if you want to go out and buy yourself a copy of this game, well, it's actually very cheap and affordable. So I see quite a few on here ranging from $10 to $15. I've also seen a couple on there that were going from $8 to $9. And I even seen a strategy guide for $20. I don't know why you need a strategy guide for a fighting game, but I don't know, I guess you can get one just to look at the cool pictures in it, I suppose. Now even though it kinda sucks that PS1 games are region locked, at least there is another way to play this one, is that you can get it on the Japanese PSN store on the PS3. As long as you have a Japanese account with some Japanese PSN cards ordered, then you're good to go. But honestly, if you're gonna go through that route, there's lots of other Japanese PS1 games on there that are much worth having. And that leads me to this game's overall thoughts. So, what do I think? Now, despite the fact that I really love the art style in this game and the music is just really fucking good shit, unfortunately, the most important part, the gameplay, is not that great. Now, even though the game is playable, it's just not the most well-refined fighting game you can get, even for 1998. And I also think another big part of this has to do with the fact that the gameplay just really hasn't aged that well. And I know there's a lot of people out there that whenever you say, hasn't aged well, they're only talking about like the 3D graphics and polygons and whatnot. But as for me, I don't give a shit if the game looks all blocky and whatever. All I care about is having a game that feels good and plays good, and of course is just, you know, fun. And sadly, this one is just not one of those things. Maybe if I would have played this as a kid, I might have liked it, but as for now though, yeah, unfortunately I just don't. But it does make me curious to want to try out the RPG game if it ever gets fan translated. So if you want a really good weapon-based fighter on the PS1, Soul Blade is just your best bet, just stick with that one. But I would also say that the first Dynasty Warrior game is also a lot better than Blue Breaker Burst. So sadly, as much as I wanted to like this game, I just couldn't. So because of that, I can't really recommend it, unless just for the music and just for the art direction, whatever. But anyways, though, with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.
Everyone died. The end.